Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for watching the YouTube channel of racquettech LLC. We're glad you're here, wherever here is. Also, combined with this is our website, racquetquest.com, and we're going to put the transcript of this recording on the site. So if you miss it, or if you're driving, and we don't want you doing too much else than driving, it'll be available for you to listen to and read if you would prefer. Um, what I wanted to talk about today was, in a word, uh, change. And change is something that occurs to your tennis racket quickly and over time. But what does it really do? Change is something that occurs almost immediately after the racket is removed from the stringing machine. We talked about this many times before, and I'll just say once again that the way that racket stringing should be addressed from now on, or actually from the very beginning, is string bed stiffness, not reference tension. But we'll get back to that in a minute, maybe. Uh, we're gaining some traction out there, everybody. Okay, so it may happen. It may actually happen. So we'll see. But anyway, change. What does it mean to you as a player? When you get your racket fresh, you go out and you begin to hit with it. It is already changing. Okay, it changes. The string bed stiffness, for example, will change between 6 and 8, 9% overnight. It doesn't matter to you because you're not going to be hitting with it as soon as it comes off the machine. Normally, some people will, but typically it's going to be a few hours anyway. And in that few hours time, the tennis racket will in fact lose stiffness. I'll call it string bed stiffness. So what happens when you begin to play with the string? Different strings react differently, of course, as we know that. If you begin to play with a string, it also changes. Okay, that number typically is going down every time you strike the ball. The string bed stiffness number is going down every time you strike the ball. All right, um, and after time, the change begins to decrease in uh, magnitude. In other words, it's not going to change quite as much as it did the first few times you begin to hit with it. And ultimately, it may level out to the point where you as a player are really digging it. This feels really good. I like it this way. And just an aside, a quick aside, for example, if that racket comes into the world headquarters of racquettech, we will know what the string bed stiffness is, and we can duplicate that, what I call tournament day stringing. Okay, we're gonna duplicate the feel that you have now for your tournament or a couple of days, whatever it happens to be, but is going to decrease in string bed stiffness over a few days. So what I mean by that is, if you want to play your very best and the racket feels really good to you right now, find out what the string bed stiffness is and duplicate it and play your tournament. And then later on down the road, as it becomes a little bit too soft, if it does, it may not, have it restrung. Not a big deal. Okay, that's what we like to do. But what else changes? Okay, one thing that doesn't change enough, in my opinion, is the overgrip. We've talked about this before as well. Some overgrips come into the world headquarters, and the first thing we do is put on rubber gloves. I call them exam gloves. And when people walk in and they see me slip on my exam gloves, they want to head out. This is not what I signed up for. But anyway, we've got to get those overgrips off, okay, before we want to mess with it. So when you're playing, change your overgrip. Now, an overgrip weighs about 5 or 6 grams, not a big deal, not very much. But a fully drenched overgrip is going to weigh about 10 or 11 grams. Okay, so there you've added 5 or 6 grams, for example, to the back of your racket, which is not a horrible thing. Okay, don't be too concerned about that at all. But all of a sudden, your racket is weighing 5 or 6 grams more than the day you bought it. Right? It's just a fact, and so that's why you get that thing off of there and get a new one on it as soon as you can, or we'll do it for you. It's not a big deal. Every string we do, we put a new overgrip on it because we obviously ripped off the old one because we don't want to mess with it. It's a little bit too nasty. But that's another story. We'll deal with that some other time. But what else changes? When we talk to people about rackets, our first inclination is to talk about weight, overall weight. And I'll say it again, weight is your friend when it comes to a tennis racket. Okay? It is stabilizing. It is mass that will mitigate the impact on your body somewhat. And it generally is more stable. Okay, so you have power and control with a heavier racket, for example. However, a racket's got to be right for you, not right for me, or not right for some 6'6" guy that is massive and has huge amounts of power. So it has to be set up for you, but it really, really, really can be contributed to your play by adding a little bit of weight. So why I mention this is because rackets will come in and the bumper guard, for example, is totally wasted. It's gone. It's scraped away to the fact, where the fact is you probably should get a new one on it, but some people just simply don't. Okay, so what happens, for example, when the bumper strip, for example, is worn away, you have lost about 5 grams of weight. Typically, that's what we see if we weigh them before and after, about 5 grams of weight. Plus, you decrease the inertia or the swing weight by about 8 units, kilos per centimeter squared, for example, but 8 units, we'll call it. Okay. So, you've got a totally different feeling racket. No question about it. And the dichotomy is if I say to you as a player, we should add 5 grams to your tennis racket, the answer is typically, oh my gosh, no, I cannot tolerate 5 grams. Okay. But if we put a new bumper strip on it, it's no big deal. It's the same thing. Okay. So understand that the weight is the weight. Okay. It doesn't matter right now where it's placed because with the bumper guard, it's going to be placed at the top. Okay. And that 5 grams makes a big difference. Well, we know it makes 8 units of difference in the inertia. Okay. So you're playing with a different racket. So the message here is keep that bumper strip in good condition and as full as you can. Okay, so some of them would come in are just really, really, really beyond the pale. I mean, the fact of the matter is the racket can be restrung because the barrels and the strip that holds the barrels is still in pretty good condition, but the strip around the top of the hoop is gone. Okay, that's a big, big deal. And if you have a racket you're looking at right now saying, gee, I wonder what the heck this is all about. If you're looking at it now and your bumper guard is worn, if you see any white ellipses, I'll call them, on the surface, you're down to the point where that racket is no longer doing what it was designed to do. Okay. If you get down too far, you're going to have a big hole there. Okay. And you can put your, dirt in there. And that's another thing that adds to the change in your racket. Soft courts you'll pick up a lot of soft court debris, I'll call it, because I don't know what some of them are, but they are soft and they're little pieces of sand and they get in your racket and there's a difference in inertia from that. That can be typically cleaned out if the bumper guard is still in good condition. It can be removed and things will be back pretty much to normal, whatever normal happens to be in in this case. So keep in mind that things do change, and they change every single day. Every time you hit the ball with the racket, it changes, and we want you to be aware of what those changes mean. Anything that changes down by your hand, for example, like the sweaty overgrip, that's not going to really concern you so much. It concerns us, but it won't concern you so much. But anything that happens above where the racket hoop begins, if you know what I'm saying, you know what the hoop is. The hoop is what's attached to the shaft, and whatever happens from there up has an effect on the inertia, and it does change the inertia. Uh, the bumper guard being destroyed will change the inertia more than adding the same 5 grams of weight down at the 3 and 9 o'clock positions at the middle of the racket. Okay. So it matters where you add the weight as to what effect it's going to have on anything. And hopefully the effect is going to be positive on your game when you get the racket set up as you like it. Okay? And that's the bottom line. When you're playing tennis, people come in, especially parents come in, they want the very, very best for their juniors. The junior is the one that's going to be hitting with the racket. I can talk to the parents can talk to their juniors, the juniors can talk to us, which we really, really like. And we let it be known that you are going to be the final say in terms of how this racket performs. We will not put a racket in your hand that's going to be potentially harmful. It's not going to happen. Okay. So we know that for sure. So if you come in looking for a new racket, for example, you know you're going to go out with something that's going to be suitable for you. All right. No one else. You're the one that's hitting with this stick, and you're the one that's going to be playing tournaments and winning, hopefully, all of the time. So keep that in mind. Things do change. So remember, keep your overgrip dry as possible. Change it after every match, for example. I would. And make sure your bumper strip, the big plastic thing that's at the very top of your racket, make sure that is uh, relatively fresh. Okay. Doesn't have to be brand new each time, of course. We don't want to have to replace a grommet set every time. That doesn't make sense. Plus, grommet sets are costly, relatively speaking, costly. But if you get to the point where your bumper guard is worn out, the next time you have your racket strung, when the string is out, put a new grommet set and bumper set in it. Okay, that would be our recommendation. So anyway, if you have any other things that you think are changing as you go, let me go back up just 1 minute. Um, People ask how long my tennis racket should last. And in terms of change, the longitudinal bending, for example, the number you see from on-site places, and we also do it, is typically used to be called an RA number. Now it's the RDC does it, but that number is the longitudinal bending stiffness of the racket. That is very, 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 very stable. That's not going to move around very much. The other dimension that we take stiffness on is the in-plane stiffness. In other words, pushing against the racket at the 3 and 9 o'clock position. We have a machine that does that, and we know what the in-plane stiffness is of a new racket. We know what the in-plane stiffness is of your racket. That is the dimension or the plane that can change after frequent stringings, especially if it's not supported well. Okay, that number can change. So it's important to know the in-plane stiffness, which we do as it's fresh, and the in-plane stiffness when it comes back in. Okay, if it's been handled properly, strung properly, there'll be very little difference. But that's where the racket will begin to break down more often than the longitudinal bending stiffness from the tip to the handle. Okay, you know what I'm saying. You know what that is. Of course you do. You're very smart people, and very smart tennis players. So that's why we like to talk to you. But if you have any questions or other things that you feel are changing that we haven't spoken about, please let us know. You can text us 407 491 4755 or go to racquetquest.com and fire off a message, and we'll see if we can answer it for you. We'd be happy to give it a try. But anything that comes to mind, please let us know, and we'll try to help you out. That's what we like to do. But anyway, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Okay? Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being here wherever here is. Bye.